Jesus freak here. It's a bit warm today by March standards. Perfect weather for me. A breezy 67. About 19, I think, for the rest of it. And I said, we're looking at the weather. It's warm. It's not raining or anything. You know the saying, too nice to stay inside, right? So I said I'd take a walk, go to the store, grab a few things while I could still afford it. Which, I've been buying less. Which means I have more to work with. So, we'll see. I've been tidying up around the place. It's like, it goes from horrible to really terrible. But first of all, there's no one at fault but me for that. The second, really terrible is still better than horrible. And it's like, I can absolutely still see the difference. Although maybe some of that would be reduced with me bringing in more groceries. And having nowhere really to put them. That's, a temporary problem. Because I'm like, take whatever opportunity I got. Get what I got out. But don't burn myself out doing it, right? You can only do so much when you got a bad heart. But, given that I've unclogged the stairwell, so to speak, which had a lot of empty boxes from, packages that I bought off Amazon, eBay, but not so much eBay anymore, Christian Book. And it's like, well, they gotta go somewhere, or they're just gonna, they're gonna gather up and gonna leave you crushed with nowhere to move. And that was what was happening. So, even just a little bit. Like right before they take the trash out in the morning on Monday. It's like, yes, I know I have a problem. And I also know no one's going to save me from this problem but me. So, wait. But it's like, there's only so much I can do. Because, I felt like in the past it was like, when it gets to be a certain point, it's like, I'm just digging myself deeper. the whole Christian thing, everything you do is going to dig yourself deeper until you wind up realizing you got to ask for help. But that's not the situation I seem to be in, although that's what I thought I was in. It's like, I had to realize that even moving slowly, as long as I moved faster than the problem, that, I got to help myself that way. Even if I do get help from outside, which, I'm still going to look into, but I got to get the worst of it dealt with first. That's always been the demotivator, dealing with the worst of the problem without help, so that I get to the point where someone would be willing to help me. That might take a few months still. We'll see. Because, I in this world, I'm not going to have some Jesus Christ figure swoop in and save me from myself. Anyway, so we're going to have to see if I can manage to take care of enough of the problem that, my support network would be able to bring someone in. I told my therapist, it was like, one of the reasons I feel like I have to at least do most of this myself is when it's that bad. Someone comes in, they're not gonna distinguish between what's potentially okay and what's not, and they're just gonna come in and whoop, 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 they're gonna get rid of it all. And I said, in some cases that might be okay, but in my case, that's probably gonna result in someone throwing out like $100 of food. So, and everything's situation dependent. And I distinguish between clutter, junk, and trash because, they're different problems and have to be dealt with differently. Anyway, even if I don't move, I'm going to need to get some cheap shelving or something. Somewhere to store my stuff. Somewhere to... I already have a wooden shelf that I keep non-perishables on. I'm probably going to need another shelf. Probably be cheap plastic shelf. And use that for more non-perishables. It's like, I always like to keep a lot on hand in case I'm demotivated, in case I'm, and there are certain things that I buy frequently and use frequently. Pasta's a non-perishable. Soup stock's a non-perishable. So, there are non-perishables that I do frequently use. The ones I'm less likely to use are, your canned soups, your Armor Star Treat, your instant rice, stuff like that. And of course, I don't use rice as much as I used to because I realized that constantly bringing it up to temperature and letting it cool down, and bringing it up to temperature and letting it cool down, and it goes in and out of the danger zone. And if there's a microscopic parasite in there, poisoning the rice, literally. That's why I have problems sometimes with leftover rice, because something happens to it, and it's not the usual kind of spoilage. And so, I've tended to move more toward barley instead. Anyway, Jesus freak out.